November 20, 2023, not 1776. We were just talking about the merits of sports betting during colonial America. Steve Fezzik said he wouldn't have wanted to be there. As we say hi on a Monday, we've got a Super Bowl rematch coming up tonight. Interested to pick Steve's pocket as far as in his brain. I could pick his pocket as well if he wants to fade the Eagles. I think he might be the other way. We do got you back here. Professional handicapper, pregame.com, two-time Super Contest winner. Now, this is super important because while Steve, he does at times, he likes to have fun at Fezzik Sports with two Z's and a K, and he likes to mix it up on social. But he's actually quite humble. So whenever I bring up the Super Contest wins, which was back in the day the biggest football betting contest on the planet with sharps abound, whenever I bring that up, he always poo-poos it. Now, I wonder if he'll poo-poo the fact that we are now closing out Week 11, Mr. Fezzik, in the NFL, and you are currently second place in Circa Millions. Would you like to poo-poo that? Welcome to the show.
I'm running better than God. So Gil Alexander talks about the Plinko puck. To give an example, I was 14-0 in Plinko results, decided like in the final minute. And so last night I've got Denver minus 2.5 to take the lead in Circa Millions. And, of course, they get outplayed the entire game. They have no business winning the game. And I was shocked that they didn't get the 3-point victory to get me my cover because that's just the way things have been going. But I am on Kansas City tonight. And if I do get Kansas City minus the 2.5, then I will take the lead in the Circa Millions.
Okay. Well, we welcome, of course, Dustin Sweetelson, Steve Fezzik joining us. I'm Patrick Maher. Always look forward to now for about a decade talking to one of the best sports handicappers on the planet. And I wanted to start here, boys. So obviously you guys know I'm in Los Angeles, and my father called me over the weekend, and he said, "What's the deal with F1 in Vegas?" And I said, "Dad, I'm in LA." He's like, "Yeah, I know, but you still have, Dustin, you still have friends in Vegas. Why am I incessantly hearing about the F1 race in Las Vegas?" And I said, "I know that all I know is that my friends, Fezzik, Amal, everybody's been complaining about the traffic. And they've been doing a good job of spinning what F1 meant to Las Vegas and the city and Clark County. Now, they reported that $1.3 billion was earned as far as the overall economic impact on the city of Las Vegas. Steve Fezzik, do you believe those figures? And let's unpack this a little bit for the first segment, because I think people are a little confused as to exactly what the hell was happening there on the strip with F1.
Yeah, so we've had to endure 5 months of construction nonstop to build all these grandstands and to like have all these temporary roads and nothing but orange cones. And some company called Applied Analytics or Analysis came up with a projected $1.3 billion economic benefit to Vegas. Well, guess what? I'm just guessing that was not a neutral arbitrator coming up with those numbers. That was like, hey, I'll hire you to inflate this number as high as humanly possible. Let me explain why that number cannot be correct. The Southern Nevada, the greater Las Vegas area, makes about $1 billion a month in gaming revenues. It's all disclosed with the Gaming Control Board, has to be put in. I'm going to make a bold prediction. If you look at the October and November win rates in Southern Nevada, last year versus this year, that will be in line, adjusted for inflation. There will be no bump in October and November. Why do I say October and November? Because I can't just count this past week. Obviously, that week's revenues should be higher than any other week. But the 5 weeks before and the week after, everyone's like not coming to Vegas. They're like, stay away. It's a disaster. It's like you don't want to go near the strip. And the locals aren't going down to gamble, so there won't be any increase at all in gaming revenues. Well, how about room rates? We talked about room rates going for $1,200 a night at Circus. I exaggerate a little bit. Circus is not a premium place to stay. Bottom line is, by the time this went ahead and came to pass, the room rates were a little bit higher than a typical November weekend. Well, guess what? They were a little bit lower these other weeks. So my estimate of the gaming revenue is zero. My estimate of the extra room revenue is zero. So where's the $1.3 billion coming from? By the way, it doesn't count to like tax Dustin and me and everyone and all of our residents to build lots of construction, pay it to construction companies. That is not an economic benefit. That is an economic misery for everyone who has to endure this, and it's just paying Peter to give to Paul. In the movie The Running Man, Richard Dawson's a villain. Killian. And they put on screen, they go, Killian is lying to you. It's not real. Whitman, Price, Haddad, last season's winners. No, they're not last season's winners. And no, Vegas is not making $1.3 billion. The actual number, go ahead and divide by 10 at best.
So you refute the F1 propaganda being purported by the city.
Show me the numbers. I want to see the $1.3 billion broken out by the different buckets and where the $1.3 billion is actually coming from. And guess what? It will never happen because I just did the math for you. It's like they're just making up the numbers.
Big guy?
Look, I'll start with this. Steve, did you at least see the highlights of the race? The track looked beautiful. It looked really nice.
Oh, no. You know what?
Yeah.
For 1 hour of my life, I wish I could have just taken a helicopter,
but the totality,
landed on the roof, and watched it. It looked so cool.
This is the point. It was like a year of inconvenience for 90 minutes of racing, right? It was a year of just the strip being torn up. I don't know if you saw some of the videos, Patrick, that were making the rounds over the weekend. They were blocking off with tarps these pedestrian bridges they built so that random people just couldn't sneak a peek at the track, like it was like they were working on the Manhattan Project behind the scenes.
Why was it so clandestine? Why wasn't it more open and welcoming?
That's the whole point, I thought, to having it out on the strip in the open, is that everyone could walk by and see it. But no, they had to protect it. I'd also say there was a dichotomy in how things were being reported. Journalists from out of town will tell you they had a great time. Yeah, of course they had a great time. They left whatever town they were in to come to Las Vegas, and they probably gambled and went out to eat. And as everyone else does on a work trip, they worked probably 50% less than they normally do when they're at home. The people that were here and know the town were taking videos of empty casino floors. Then we heard a lot of cover-ups like, well, that's only because the people here for F1 are in the high roller room only. Oh, sure. They're behind closed doors. That's where all the money is. I agree with Steve. I think there's a lot of shady stuff going on.
Now, it'd be perfectly great as an example to draw a parallel to tell me, hey, Steve, you can go out and have a nice dinner with Lisa Ann one evening. I'm all for it. Sounds great. In fact, you know what? I'm willing to sacrifice. I'm willing to not put up with extra construction and extra delays and the like.
Not being able to imagine you just scheduled a vacation a year ago for now, not knowing the race was here, and you couldn't just walk up and down the strip because it was blocked off.
But I can't give up all living for 6 months just to spend a dinner, no matter how phenomenal she is, with Lisa Ann.
Well, they signed a 3-year contract, so get ready.
Well, they can
also
cancel that
tough
contract.
sell when you're generally leaving the house late at night to go drop by Circa and the South Point to put a bet in. Tough sell to wifey when you say, I'm leaving the house late at night to go grab dinner with Lisa Ann.
I have to go to Circa Sports to refund my account, Patrick. You seem to be mistaken in your details. Yes.
Oh no, we should. Oh,
there was a large Maryland bet on Saturday, right?
Oh God, it's funny because I'm like the king of posting big losers on my Circa account, and people are like, poor Steve, and I'm like, I do fine. And Jeff Benson comes out and he says, Steve's a winner against us. And I don't know if people were happy or unhappy. They seemed generally a little bit unhappy about that. Go figure.
No, if you're wondering whether or not people are wishing on social media for good fortune your way, that would be very short-sighted on your part. They want you to fail on social. Steve Fezzik, there's a reason you left a great job in Los Angeles, 22, 23, 25 years ago to move to Las Vegas and have been a professional handicapper since then. You can't do that if you're losing all the time, my friend.
Oh, my goodness. And people I got into a big fight with this guy on a podcast, Johnny. And Johnny was like, if you're so good at this sports, how come you don't have a $30 million betting bankroll? And I'm like, you realize, when you're living a good lifestyle, you got to make $10,000 a month just to break even, minimum. Mortgage payments, child going to private school, you get the idea. It's not easy when you're raising a family and with all the other expenses. It's not like a bankroll just grows exponentially because you have no expenses.
I'd like to say that's not your son, Johnny, you were fighting with, right? He wasn't upset with Dad.
Oh, I never fight with my I literally, my son's also an angel. He's
also
phenomenal.
would like to say to the detractors, I had to go through a gate when I visited Steve Fezzik's house. So trust me, he's doing just fine. okay? It was very private. Hey, before we come back and talk about Week 11 and, of course, the Super Bowl rematch, sitting 2.5 right now, Fez, with the Chiefs laying it. Quick question for the two of you. Have either of you been to the Jim Dolan Sphere? That is also something that nationally, it's a huge obsession for people outside of Vegas. And people that don't know, it's the big it's like the big lit up sphere with the smiley face on it. Have you guys been?
I've been to the outside. I've driven past it, and I got to tell you, when it's in the background, I guess it's on Sahara. I don't know what road I was on, and it was in the background. I caught myself not looking at the road for very long stretches, as like it was a basketball that was rolling, and it was like a yellow smiley face. It's one of the coolest things I've ever seen from the outside. I'm just waiting for someone who I actually like to play there before going inside.
It is the coolest thing ever, to the point where rooms on the Strip now, people are requesting, obviously, like you stay at Caesars, you go in the Augustus Tower, you want the fountain. You want to see the fountains of Bellagio. Well, people are requesting a sphere view. That is the premium rooms now, because you could just look out on it. I mean, it's not Lake Tahoe, but for Vegas, I mean, yeah, love looking at the Sphere.
Week 11 commences tonight and finishes up with Kansas City hosting Philly. 2.5 is the number. 46 is the total. Steve Fezzik, pregame.com, Fezzik Sports on Twitter. He's sitting second in Circa Millions. He said he's running better than God. A lot of that has to do with talent as a sports bettor as well. But let's discuss what you said right as we came back from the break. Now, you've got 3 games on Thanksgiving. Of course, the early game in Detroit Ford Field. Detroit's laying 7.5, total 47. Dallas, no surprise, doubles up to 11, hosting Washington. And Seattle is hosting San Francisco. I've got DraftKings showing 6.5 with San Francisco laying it and 43.5 on the number. Steve, let's start there.
Yeah, down to 6 at Circa. I'm kicking myself. So my power ratings, that's the starting point of any handicap. I've got the Niners 7 points better than an average team. So they're right there with Kansas City being the best in the NFL. I got Seattle 1 point better than an average team. So I take the difference. I know Seattle lost to the Rams, but that discount, that's phony. It's because Geno got hurt and they couldn't do anything with their backup quarterback in the fourth quarter. I was spooked a little. Is Geno going to play, though? So I didn't actually bet it, but I didn't give it out to my clients. But the differential 6, that makes the line 6 on a neutral, and the game's in Seattle, and Seattle is a big home field. So Seattle had great value at 7, and this is the difference between winning or losing in sports betting. It's too late. So you really needed to get 7 with Seattle, and it's gone now. So let's move on to other opportunities. But that's just, just to give an example, you're like, people will say stuff like, oh, well, let me buy the 7. And it's like, no, buying points is stupid. Plus 7 minus 25 is not the same as plus 7, lay $1.10. And frankly, a lot of books charge 20 cents now, Patrick, to buy onto the 7. So don't do that. I'd still lean to Seattle, though, at the DraftKings number at plus 6.5. Late minus 10.
Let's stick with that, because I want to also ask you about a text you sent us about the efficiency of the NFL markets. We'll get to that in just a second, but let's elucidate a little bit on buying a half a point and why over the long run, when you end up chipping in on that extra juice, why you're going to end up not necessarily profiting. Can you kind of expound upon that?
Yeah, because when you're buying non-important numbers, it's never worth 10. It's worth maybe 6 or 7 cents on a lot of numbers, but the dastardly books charge you 10 cents. Now, it used to be you could buy on or off the 3 or the 7 for 10 cents at a few select books, and that was actually a really good advantage play. But now, those cockroach bookmakers, they're not charging you like the true value. They're charging more than the true value, to the point that you buy on or off a 3. There's books now charging 25 cents and 30 cents. So instead of playing, for example, if you had the Eagles plus 2.5, laying $1.10, they would go ahead and charge you now at plus 3, lay $1.35 or 40, and you're better off just never buying a half point, because the rare exceptions where it's good are so few and far between. As a bettor, just never buy half points.
And what Steve's talking about is your standard vigorish is $1.10. What Steve's saying is you used to be able to come off the 3 or go from 2.5 up the 3 if you wanted to take the Eagles for 10 cents. So as opposed to laying the standard juice at 110, you could pay $1.20. Now, Steve, my assumption is, like you said, it's closer to $1.35. Yeah,
the last bastion in Vegas to do that was Station Casinos, and that ended 15 years ago, where they let you buy from the plus 2.5 to the plus 3. It was outstanding.
Shout to Stations, Green Valley Ranch, which is one of our home casinos there, Steve, in Henderson. A couple of questions about Well, let me just follow up on the text you sent. So Steve said, I want to speak for a while today about the efficiencies of the NFL markets and why lines simply are not off by any real amounts ever at posts. Let's go ahead and jump into that.
Yeah, so the limits are super high. You know, if I checked on Circa, I'll do that while I'm speaking. I'm sure I could bet $100,000 on this game tonight. So on Kansas City, Philly. Now, I can't bet anything close to that on the games coming up on Thursday or on Sunday. So what's the difference? It's all NFL, right? So it is $200,000 limit on Eagles Chiefs, and I can bet $10,000 on Packers Lions. Why? Because Circa and the rest of the books are still in price discovery point. They're not confident in their number. The Seattle San Fran game was an example. They weren't confident, but who cares? They're taking $5,000 or $10,000 on that game. They're very confident that they have the right number on tonight's game, and specifically. As we speak, Kansas City is minus the 2.5. So because of that, I know at other books there's a little bit extra vig on Kansas City. I would say, Patrick, the line isn't 2.5 on this game, though. I would call it like 2.6. So there's a little extra vig. So if Steve Fezzik set his line in his no vig sports book, all right, I would go ahead and let you bet Kansas City minus 2.5, like minus 105, and Philly you could get plus 2.5, plus 105. You see where I'm going. You could bet both sides and break even. So the worst bet you could possibly make would be Philly plus 2.5 laying $1.10. You're basically paying an extra 15 cents in vig. Now, I heard you earlier, and you brought up the great point that there's extra liability on Kansas City. And there's a lot of reasons to like Kansas City. Kansas City is my pick in the Circa Millions. Andy Reid off of a bye. You get the better team slightly. They're at home. You could make the case that Hurts may not be 100%, and all Mahomes does is win close games. All of those analysis could say, that you would lean towards Kansas City, and they're one of my millions picks. But guess what? You flip this up to plus 3. Absolutely, I would bet the Eagles plus 3. And people are like, well, how can that be? And I'd come over the top and say, I think my Kansas City bet's going to win like 52.5% of the time. And Philly plus 3 would win about 52.5%.
Steve, you're a very consistent human being. It's one of the ways I would describe you is that you have principles that you stand by when it comes to sports betting. Does anything ever change when it comes to these primetime games, Monday or Thursday?
Yes, great question. So does anything ever change if there's a preponderance of money, public money on a side? That can change everything. To use an example last week, there was a great narrative, and I fell into it as well, where the Raiders were in a horrific spot going to South Beach and playing Miami, and it was a great spot for Miami, and they just kept betting Miami. So you could make the case, you can throw power ratings out the window, Miami's going to kill them. And ultimately they didn't. The Raiders played a very good game, and the Raiders only lost by 7. But I would make the case, and I used to manage betting syndicates. I'd work with betting syndicates. If you lost with last week laying 11.5 or laying 12 with Miami or minus 10, you're doing a great job. Yeah, you lost your bet. But if you laid 13.5, you did a pretty mediocre job. And if you laid 14, if you waited till this sharp fifth grader can spot the great spot for very sharp fifth grader for the Dolphins. You're just not trying hard enough. You got to get at these obvious good spots before it just keeps the pendulum swings too far on the good handicap or the good story.
Now, we were talking earlier, and just for edification, Steve, when we started here. And again, we always denote the juice as a way of kind of seeing which way for new bettors the wind is blowing. So when we opened up the program, Kansas City was laying 2.5 at DraftKings, 115. DraftKings right now is showing 2.5 with the juice at 118. So I was just trying to let new bettors know that shows you that it could be headed back up to 3. It was 3 earlier this morning. So the distinction there, 3 down to 2.5, a big deal. And I'm curious, the 46. Now, I don't often hear you talking about totals. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but primetime unders this year hitting at a 76% clip, 26-8. Has that forced you into the total market more during primetime games?
I certainly can't ignore it, but it's become such a narrative now that the word is getting out, and you're seeing people just blindly playing it. Be careful with these 76% and small samples. We talk about the Circa Millions. I can't hit 54% in the NFL against widely available lines long term. Can't do it. But to quote Kelly Leak in the movie Bad News Bears, I'm Kelly Leak, and I'm batting 745 this year, 38, 13, and 3. So my streak is about the same as these primetime unders. Guess what? Walk by a roulette wheel, walk by enough of them, and you will see a Kelly Leak type of black or red run where black is hitting, 14 and 2. It's just don't be fooled by the random noise. The game last night should have gone over. There was turnovers in the red zone.
Do you find a common thread, though? Do you find a common thread? You're being modest, but do you see a common thread with your picks in Circa Millions this year?
Yes, the sharp money that's been bet on Fridays has done very well, and I tend to follow a lot of that sharp money moves when the limits go up in town. Like I said, the Circa limits are only 10,000 on NFL sides right now. It's 200,000 on the game tonight.
Pregame.com, Fezzik Sports on Twitter for Mr. Fez. He does have a few props. I know the big guy does as well. I have a prop I love tonight with Kansas City hosting the Eagles, 2.5 to the number. We'll get to that coming up in just a bit. But I wanted to back up a little bit, Steve, to get some takeaways from Week 11 from you. I always like to get in your mind and then figure out the application for the next week. Cleveland. And for those that don't know, Steve grew up near Cleveland. In Ohio. I wonder what you do with this team. Obviously, the ceiling maybe not quite as high, but that is a very special defense. Now, 7-3 with the win yesterday in Pittsburgh. What's interesting is they also take on a team that I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, the Denver Broncos, who all of a sudden are on a heater with the win last night. It's those two teams squaring off this Sunday in the late window. Cleveland at Denver, and Denver's laying 2.5.
Yeah, it looks about right to me. Slightly better team in Denver and in altitude as well. I caught your earlier segment, Patrick. I'm pleased to be able to report. If you want Cleveland to win the AFC, I'd be more than happy to give you 40-1, because although you bring up some excellent points about that Browns defense is special, it's not 1996 anymore, and I just don't believe that you can make the Super Bowl with an elite defense and no quarterback, and they have no quarterback. So I think they're one and done in the playoffs. That's the team you want to play.
Right.
Although
I think
they're going to make the playoffs, and many will say all you got to do is get in, and then you can go ahead and make it. You know what? As a Cincinnati Bengal lifelong fan, and I'm Southern Ohio, Patrick, we hate the Browns in our parts. It's like Sam White once yelled, "Stop throwing batteries on the field. We're not Cleveland." So when the fans were upset.
Well, you must have been upset. That's right. Southern Ohio for Mr. Fez. You must have been upset because we also had a 40-1 on the Bengals to win a championship. And with Joe Burrow out goes the Bengals, not just championship opportunities, but chances to make the postseason as well.
It's always interesting when the media, whenever this happens, the media always looks at a team's record and they're like, oh, there's a path, they can do well. Like, remember in the Jets, we only thought they'd start 2-2 and they're on track to be 2-2. And I'm like, no, they're donezo, they're dead. Having said all this, the one team that has surprised me so far, I thought the Vikings would just go completely to heck. And the fact they've already gotten to 6 wins, that is the best coached team. It's just incredible. The fake punt last night, such a great call. So really good things from game management from the Vikings.
By the way, boys, that fake punt, tell me if you guys disagree with this. I think O'Connell set up that fake punt towards the end of the first half when he punted on 4th and 1. Do you guys remember what I'm talking about? He was just they were in Bronco territory. O'Connell's a new age guy, Steve. He punted. And when he punted there, I was like, he's setting him up for later in the game. He never punts in that situation in the opposing team's territory. 4th and 1, he punted. I swear to you, I think it was setting up for what you just said, that fake punt later in the game.
Yeah, and all 4th and 1s are not created equal. I mean, I'm a huge analytics guy, and I love going, all things being equal, when in doubt. If you got 4th and 1, I'm like, go for it. But it's not that big of a deal. If you got 4th and 1 and a good kicker on your opponent's 30, you can kick the field goal. I'm fine with that, because even if you get the first down, you still got a long way to go to get the touchdown. What drives me crazy, and where the rubber hits the road, and I just can't stand, the media that loves field goals. This is so extreme. It's bizarre. Patrick, if you have 4th and goal from the 1-inch line, I am almost indifferent in some situations between kicking the field goal and taking a knee. All right. The field goal is better, but it's close. And why is it close? Because the field goal isn't worth 3 points. Yes, you put 3 on the scoreboard, but now your opponent gets it on the 25 instead of the 1. So that 24 yards of field position, you're giving back like a 1.5 minimum. So the field goals were basically worth 3 minus 1.5. The field goal's worth 1.5. The touchdown's worth 5.5. So are you going to make it, more than 5.5 divided of 7ths of the time? Or you're going to be stopped, 80% of the time? Of course not. So that's a situation. I don't care if you don't think you can make it. Just put anybody out there, run a wildcat if you have to, and go for it on 4th and 1.
It's compound philosophy. That's a compound situation, like where you almost cut your nose to spite your face to take the 3. You've talked about it for years. I totally agree. I wanted to ask you about Miami. And again, pardon me, I misspoke earlier when I said the Jets are traveling to Miami. Miami, of course, travels to Jersey. Tim Boyle has been named the starter on Black Friday. Miami just went to 10 at DraftKings, so 9.5 up to 10 and 40. Walk us through what you do with this game.
So, again, I'm going to do it without any player analysis because on my power ratings, I go ahead and make it like 9.5. Actually, I make it 10 with Boyle because I have it a 1.5 downgrade. Now maybe the players will play harder, but I doubt it. I think they know it doesn't matter. They're doomed at quarterback, and Tim Boyle is not a second-string quarterback in the NFL. He's a third-string quarterback. So certainly it's a downgrade. It is a Thanksgiving tradition during that week for me to get my teeth kicked in, getting ridiculous rogue numbers on the late game on Thanksgiving and then watching that team get destroyed by the better team. So now that we have a standalone Black Friday game, I think more of the same because no one's going to want these JETS Jets, and I want to get in front of it. So earlier in the day, I laid an 8.5 with Miami. I think I'd encourage you, as long as you can get it below 10, go ahead and try to tease if you can get down to minus 2.5 before it goes up to 10, and then you can't tease it anymore. Now, when you tease, you can't tease down to minus 3. It has to be minus 2.5. So it has to be a 7-point teaser or whatever it takes to get down to minus 2.5. But get some Miami in your portfolio. You'll be happy you do so, and then a post you can figure out, how to get at the Jets. Remember, a lot of the pros aren't even working, so there's nothing to stop the public from betting the hell out of this game to make it go even higher.
Steve, I have a random question. Just with the way things played out for a lot of the teams that are playing on short weeks this week, the Lions struggle with the Bears. Miami lets the Raiders hang around. Commanders lose outright to the Giants. Like the Niners at the end let the Tampa Bay Bucks back in, and they don't cover that big spread. Have you noticed, or is there a way to attack teams with short weeks the week prior instead of thinking about it that week? It looks like this year for me, I've noticed a lot of these teams don't look as good the week before their short week because they're showing a little bit less.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would argue, though, on the Thursday teams, Green Bay, Dallas, and San Fran all did cover. I'm going to say that San Fran covered for most of the week. I know they kind of, you could make the case they really shouldn't have won by 13. So that's a good point. If Tampa had just lost by 6, then all of a sudden we'd be looking at all these teams and say, wow, this is 8 teams and only 2 of them covered. So you know what? I'm going to come around to that. That I think that is a legitimate. Maybe we should be looking to not back any of the teams with the short turnaround and looking only to fade them the week before or pass the game.
My Lions closed 7.5, maybe 8 at a couple of shops yesterday, hosting the Bears. Right now, the Lions are laying 7.5, hosting the Packers. Is it the right number?
I have the Lions 4.5 better than an average team, and Green Bay 2 worse. That makes it 6.5 on a neutral, 1.5 for home field. Puts me on 8, and this is kind of an exercise. My power ratings almost never land me on a game that's off by more than 1.5 or 2 points. At opener, absolutely. I'll use an example. The look-ahead line on Houston-Jacksonville. So I opened Houston +3, even reduced vig, and I was like, "That's the stupidest line I've ever seen." It's like whammo. I without hesitation, I bet it twice at +3 lay a 5 and +3 lay a $10. Those lines happen all the time. Vegas. Tons of respect for Mr. Lombardi with what he does, but he did say something that, like, I can tell you the pros just disagree with, where they say, well, Vegas knows what they're doing and they never put up a bad number. I assure you, and Jeff Benson has spoken about this at Circa, Vegas puts up tons of bad numbers because they're in price discovery mode. Look, the best example is the WNBA All-Star game that opened 250 and closed 196, okay? no one had any clue that the format had completely changed in the game. Well, guess what? It's a $500 limit, and people just kept betting it down, 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 like that rock lobster song. Down.
That was
down.
That was the band from Athens. What was the band? The name
REM?
of that band? No. They sang.
The B-52s?
Yeah.
Love Shack, baby. Yeah, that was B-52s, isn't it? Hey, Steve, I talked about a movie earlier that I was wrong on, but did you ever see Fatal Attraction with Glenn Close when Shorty boiled the rabbit?
Yeah, that was one of the best movies ever. Ending a little subpar, could have been more sad. Yes.
Can't be boiling rabbits, Steve. Not during the holidays.
No, you can't.
Steve, you know for a fact a lot of people are going to be sweating a 6-point tease on Thanksgiving. They're going to bring the Lions down to 1.5, and they're going to bring San Francisco in the late game down to about a half a point. I say about because some would show a pick 'em. Do you agree with that tease and walk us through why or why not?
No, it's like my cousin Vinny. No, the defense is wrong. Do not tease that game. Now, you could have made a case for it like an hour ago, but that San Francisco line just cratered down to -6. So that means you're going to be able to get the Niners at a money line of less than -280. It's the same bet. So if you're teasing -6.5 down to half, it's the same as playing the money line. So there's no reason to throw Niner teasers. And if you're laying -120, 6-point NFL teaser, the math is such that that's the same approximately as laying -280 per leg. So since you're going to be able to get a money line if you got enough outs, less than -280, I'm going to veto. Get that?
Wait.
Veto?
Back up. Your brain works too fast. Now, just slow down. Tell somebody just tuning in right now, they opened up an account 6 months ago. They look at it and they think, well, it's a lock Detroit's going to win and it's a lock San Francisco's going to win. But explain why, because of the San Francisco number to that new better, why that doesn't make sense.
Okay, so the Lions teaser, I fully endorse. It makes a lot of sense. So you tease it down. It's a Wong teaser through the corridor, 3 through 7. Boom. Go read Stanford Wong, Sharp Sports Betting, his book. I know Stanford Wong, friend of mine. That one qualifies. But San Fran doesn't for 2 reasons. One, they're a little more vulnerable because they're a road favorite. Road favorites don't win as much. And they're not favored by 7.5 to 8.5. They're only favored by 6.5. So it turns out when you're playing a teaser on a 6.5-point favorite, you're essentially saying, I'm betting them to win. It's the exact same bet as playing the money line. That's why the worst teaser in the world is teasing a 5.5-point favorite, because you're essentially laying -280 per leg on that leg of the teaser, and you could probably get them on a money line like -240. You're literally paying an extra 40 cents. Now, it's not as bad in this case, but I'll say if you shop around and you have enough outs, you're probably going to be able to find -265 on San Fran. So if you want to invest San Fran to just win the game, that's the better investment.
See, Dustin? It's a beautiful mind, but just like on Yellowstone, sometimes you got to do the lasso thing and corral the mind. Because his brain goes fast, and he just thinks that everybody is on the same. Like he was essentially a grandmaster in the state of Ohio in chess. He thinks that people's brains work the same speed. They just don't, Fez.
I feel the walls closing in on me.
But you confirm I did appropriately graduate in the bottom 10 of my class. You confirm it for me every time you speak. I realize how dumb I am when I hear your brain work.
You know what?
I want to do the same exercise that you did with Detroit and Green Bay when I told you the number was 7.5, and you said your true number was 8 on the game. I want to do that with Washington and Dallas and walk us through the power ratings, the number. Take us through it. It's 11 right now with Dallas laying at 48.5 on the total.
Yeah, and let's be sure to save some time because I do have some prop bets on the Monday night game tonight.
Of course.
Washington, I have 3 points worse than an average team. Dallas, I have 6.5 points better. That would make the line 9.5 on a neutral. Boom. Home field's worth about 1.5 only, so that gets me to 11. Guess what? The line is 11. It's going to be very difficult to engineer a good bet given my number exactly matches the current marketplace.
Beautiful. All right, let's get to tonight. Steve Fezzik, Dustin Sweetelson. I'm Patrick Maher. Philly at Kansas City. I think we're all excited about this one. 2.5 $1.18. I see another shop going to $1.15. So maybe we get the 3. So again, Steve, if you can find a 3, if you like Philly, it'll get hit back down to 2.5 quickly. But let's call it 2.5 with Kansas City, 46. We'll start side total, and I know you have props. Start side total there.
And I'm like the old guy. Get off my lawn. It's Kansas City minus 2.5, minus 118. I think with more and more people entering, I always say the minus sign. The bookmakers don't. So just that way you'll never make a mistake or be confused. 3 props that I just bet today. I bet punts to go under 8.5. These are available on DraftKings. My take is both teams are like, hey, we're going to have to score to win. They'll be aggressive. They'll go for it on 4th and 1, 4th and 2. Of course, Philly will go for it because it's an automatic. They basically get 4 downs. Everyone else only gets 3 because they automatically convert 4th and 1s and 4th and 1.5s. So I could see some long, time-consuming drives by both teams also, so punts under 8.5. Field goals, longest field goal. I don't care. The kickers are good. I'm going to go under 47.5. Subpar weather and aggressive coaches, so I think they'll go for it. If they do have that 4th and 3 from the 35-yard line instead of kicking, with some rain in Kansas City tonight. So because of that, I played longest field goal under 47.5 and largest lead over 13.5. And this is not a math or play. This is just a gut feel. It sure seems like Kansas City, more than any team, when they're in a close to a pick'em situation, it doesn't seem to go back and forth like 3-3, 10-10, 17-13. That team gets down double digits all the time and then comes back to win. There was one playoff game. I think they trailed by 24, and literally by halftime they were back ahead, and then they got up double digits. So largest lead. I would not play over 14, but 13.5. The price is right there. I'll play over 13.5.
Great job, Steve. Punts under 8.5 for the game. Longest field goal under 47.5. And the largest lead over 13.5. Again, if you're looking at a 14, Steve says stay away from that, but he would play the 13.5. Quickly, I have one prop, boys. Devontae Smith over Dustin and Steve, 7 targets. No Dallas Goedert. His target share goes way up when Goedert is out. The 5 games in his career that Devontae Smith has played without Goedert, he's gone 8+ as far as targets in all of 5. So I'm going to go over 7 targets for Devontae Smith. Big guy, what do you got?
Valdez-Scantling over 1.5 receptions. Eagles allow the most receptions per game to wide receivers, and I think he will have Bradbury on him because Slay will get Rice on the other side. He's had over that number the last 3 games. Also, this is my favorite one. It's my first under prop bet of the year. Swift under 81.5 combo yards. Chiefs are great against the pass for running backs, just 88 rush yards per game, and he's averaged only 3.3 yards a pop since week 5. He's not the same guy we saw to start earlier in the year. This defense for Casey's awesome. I see him going under that. Hurts anytime touchdown as well, minus 125. As long as that play is legal at the goal line where he can just roll in on the brotherly shove, I'm betting him anytime touchdown.
That play, you should be able to have one guy push you. I think they're
the whole team.
Where they need to change the rules. They can't just have the rugby scrum. And I'm a huge believer, Patrick. Bold prediction. There's going to be like 3 guys from New Zealand that are rugby players. That literally they're going to recruit in to put on the practice squad just to be ready. And to think about it, you don't want your quarterback to get killed, getting pushed. You put the rugby guy out there and have 2 other tough rugby guys that are well versed in just practicing grabbing his chest plate and pushing upwards and forward while the other guy pushes him in the bum. And it's very tough to stop.
Steve, how is the prop market altered a professional's preparation like yourself?
Yeah, well, the props are where 99% of the bettors should be betting. You should, the market is so efficient. And remember, this is coming from, I'm having a dream year in all these contests. And I'd be like, all the time I text people, stop screwing around with these NFL sides. What are you doing? Because I'll use the F1 race, for instance. I am sure there's people right now listening to this right now saying these guys are dummies. I got to bet on how many cars are going to finish this race, or what the fastest lap was going to be. They were just giving away money, and no one's paying any attention. Who cares if it's a $300 limit or a $500 limit or a $100 limit? If you only bet $100 per game, focus in on something that is extremely inefficient, like I'm sure the F1 racing props were this past week. I was too busy. I didn't do it, but I'm sure I left money just lying on the strip.
I would imagine you and Pastrami, the majority of your NBA plays, all props?
Yeah, the Pastrami, my really sharp friend, he literally will text me. We have an account that's up. You wouldn't believe me if I told you the amount that it was up. And he's like, can't believe you bet an NBA game. What are you doing? He was screaming at me. So
Meaning a game itself, side or total, but he'll bet props in the NBA.
An NBA side of you, the madness. What are you doing?
An NBA side is basically hieroglyphics to me at this point. I can't decipher.
If you are smart enough to be able to beat the NBA sides and the NFL sides at any one point, I'm not talking about like all of a sudden like LeBron James is reported out and you're past posting him in the next 10 seconds. That's information driven. That's fine. But once a market is static, if you're smart enough to be able to beat that market, then I assure you, you can absolutely, you will make millions and millions of dollars. There's betting exchanges at minus 102 in each direction. You can hit, if you could hit 50.5%, you can make money in these markets, but not laying $1.10, minus 110 you can't.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.